I would like to thank our presenting sponsors, Rand and Jeanette Elliott, and the architecture firm, of Elliott and Associates. Our other sponsors are Mickey Flagg and the Midtown Renaissance, and Shannon and Chip Fudge. And also the City of Oklahoma City's Commercial District Revitalization Program. So can I ask you to give a big round of applause for all our sponsors? I would also like to thank long-term sponsors of our lecture series who have been with us since the very beginning, and that's John and Mary Seward, and Ira and Sandy Schlesinger. Relevant discussion for us. As many of you know, that we are, as Oklahoma Contemporary contemplates its move downtown. I know a lot of you know about this already, but it's scheduled to be in 2016. So we are very interested in the topic of art and its impact on urban regeneration. This lecture is the first in a series of 4. We have another lecture coming up in December, and one in March, and another in June next year, all on the same topic. So we hope that you will attend those as well. And if you look on our website, you'll see information about those coming up soon. We are currently involved in planning our new facility and in getting ready for a capital campaign. So a lot of what Manon is going to talk about today from first hand is how we can use the art to impact areas such as this where we're planning to come and reside in the future. And you can see on your tables that we are still programming fantastic museum quality exhibitions like the one that you have on your tables. We have on the 15th of October Ana Maria Hernando coming to Oklahoma City, and her exhibition, The Illuminated Garden, will be on display until December. So we hope that many of you will come to that as well. And also, we are very much an education facility, so we are all the time having classes for adults and children, and you have examples of their work on your table as centerpieces. So I hope you will enjoy those and possibly inspire you to sign up for class. Our guest speaker today, Manon Slome, has been working with No Longer Empty, a non-profit organization in New York, since 2008, where she founded the organization and she is the president. She is also an independent curator. She has worked in other cities in the world, and she has brought her program to great success in other places as well as New York. So I think we're all really eagerly anticipating what Manon is going to talk to us about today. So please give her a big welcome.
And what I'm going to present today is part of a book that I'm preparing on the first 4 years of No Longer Empty. There will probably be the first 5 years by the time I've published it. So I'm going to try, please, I move around a lot, so if you can't hear me, please yell for that. Nice. So I want to start by saying that I never started by forming an organization. My curatorial interest is always centered around where art and social issues meet. And I was walking along Madison Avenue 15 storefronts empty. It was the spring of 2008, and New York was reading from the news that Lehman Brothers had collapsed. There was a feeling of shock, and not to conflate two very different realities, but a sense of foreboding, of fear, a kind of intake of breath that reminded me somewhat of the city post 9/11. Banks were imploding, iconic companies heading to bankruptcy, and store after store was empty. Even in the storefronts that had businesses still in them, there were empty of customers. Believe me, nobody in New York was shopping that week. And the sales attendants, in trying to look busy, were tidying immaculate piles of already tidy cashmere sweaters. The words empty, empty, empty kept going through my head. The emptiness not just of the stores, but of the whole structure on which the bubble of wealth had been resting. The derivatives, the subprime mortgages, the shady dealings, and the lies, even the week before everything was fine with the system. And as mentioned, my curatorial interests have always resolved around these intersections of art and social policy, and I began to think about an exhibition called Empty that reflected the realities. And then I thought of placing that exhibition in one of the empty storefronts as sort of fitting for its theme. So our first site was, that I was literally given the same week that I had the idea, was the former Chelsea Hotel on 23rd Street in Chelsea. Some of you may know it was in that building Warhol lived and many artists. It was full of art, and the person who owned it wanted to sell the building and had kept all the storefronts that belonged to the hotel empty. So I was actually at a dinner and talking about my ideas, and she said, well, you can have this storefront, go ahead. So I literally, in about 2-3 weeks, I put an exhibition together with a group of friends. Okay, and as you can see, the place was an absolute mess. And that's the exhibition that we put together. As a curator in an institution, I was much more used to sort of creating an exhibition and then being back in my office. I certainly wasn't on the gallery floor meeting with people. And the exciting thing for me about this first exhibition was that we'd open the space, we were guiding it, people would poke their head in and say, what's going on? We'd say, it's an exhibition, come in, it's free. And I was, for the first time as a curator, in a position to talk to the audience about the art, and I found it really, really exciting. 23rd Street is a very busy pedestrian street. It's a cross street as well, but a lot of transportation. So people literally on their way to work or shopping, were sort of, or even people that were looking for the former fishing tackle store were popping their heads in and re-engaged. And the exhibition was only initially supposed to be up for a month, then we extended it, and then again, one of these apocryphal stories, I started looking at empty spaces, and I said to another friend at a board meeting, I just saw this site, it was in the meatpacking district on 14th Street, and compared to that first sort of very derelict story, it was like a Gagosian, sort of pristine white walls and concrete, it was waiting for a tenant. And she said, oh, my husband owns that building, so I got to get that building too. And little by little, 4 years later, we've done 14 exhibitions, hundreds of public programs, and welcomed close to 250,000 visitors. I just wanted to show you one site that we started. This was in Brooklyn, and it was a former belt factory. And there's a group called Improv Everywhere. Have you heard of them? It's a group that literally improvises, and probably their most famous project was they had a couple of hundred people that didn't know each other, but they put an email call for participants. They were in Grand Central Station, and when the clock struck 11, they all became sort of living statues. So we invited them into the to do the opening project for this belt factory. And the belt factory, there was a toy in the 70s, 80s that was known as the invisible dog. It was, they used to make it with trimmings from the belts, and it was like a wire that looked as though you had a dog at the end of it, but you didn't have a dog. And there were thousands of these left at the factory we found. So we invited Improv Everywhere. All these people turned up not knowing what they were going to do. And we gave them these thousands of toys, and up they went onto the streets of Brooklyn. And within half an hour, stores were putting up signs, "We welcome invisible dogs." One guy put sunglasses on, and his dog became a blind dog. And the film crews, the TV crews were out sort of 20 minutes later. So it was an amazing fun project that really brought publicity to this art centre, which is now running as the Invisible Dog Art Centre. No longer empty's model of site specificity, community responsiveness, and collaborative practice that I will go on to speak about later, has evolved as a response to our experience and the logistics of the site. Like many of our exhibitions, our organisation has emerged and evolved as a result of working in a very open way with artists, our staff, interns, volunteers, and being responsive to the feedback of what has been well received or not in the communities where we've worked. We've tried to create a new sense of space in which experimentation can take place, experimentations in the way art is made, how it's presented, and who the publics for that art might be. Working in vacant or underutilized spaces in urban contexts, we've tried to develop a notion of accessibility, and this is a word that I'm going to keep coming back to, for art to a wider public while revitalizing those spaces into hubs of art, performance in its many modes, discourse and education. At the same time, those formerly empty sites in those neighborhoods are opened up for exploration and discovery. So this is a kid's drawing, obviously, about art in schools. And so now that I've said a little bit about the model, I want to say a little bit about why I devote my life to this, and I really do. So we're driven by an unshakable belief that's constantly reinforced by our practice, that art is an indispensable experience in life to enrich life. Give a child crayons and paints in any circus and see them enter a realm that unites their inner selves with the way that they perceive the world. For those lucky enough to retain that spark and that desire, art can provide a direction through thorny and often treacherous pathways of life. And of course, education in its many facets can do the same. But the exceptional thing about art is that there's no right or wrong answer in art. We have such test-driven educational systems that kids are not encouraged to imagine, to think of what other possibilities can be. And art can and must reflect all the dichotomies between right and wrong, and complicate life and its perception in magical ways. But sadly, we're educated out of those first uninhibited free experiments with paints and crayons. We learn very early on that we can't draw, and way too often early visits to museums on school trips continues the lesson that art and its institutions are not for us. You know, I've been with my kids to school trips. Don't run, don't shout, don't touch, don't talk. It's all about don't. This growing alienation is compounded by the reduction of art education in schools, the perceived difficulty of contemporary art, and the ever-growing alienation the ever-growing institutional and commercial boundaries of class, education, snobbery and elitism that has grown around art. These two slides are from P-Day's recent performance in Pace Gallery and Lindsay Lopan at the Whitney. You know, we've all seen a rash of international biennials, the exploding art market, a kind of real social rising through art. And again, in New York, it can cost $100 for a family of 4 to go to a museum. Guggenheim's 20, MoMA's 25. It's expensive, and when you add the parking and the food, it's beyond the means of a lot of people. So it's no longer MT's mission to counter this alienation and provide a more democratic access to experiencing art by placing site-responsive exhibitions in non-traditional art spaces in the heart of communities. And this is a quote, "For when there are no though doors and admissions are taken away, the audience changes. When an exhibition goes to the public, art may be encountered unwittingly. Dorothy Rifter in a really good online publication called Curating. So as art becomes driven by the market and becomes ever more globalized and chic on the one hand, access for many becomes more and more limited. Why is it that art and music programs are the first to be cut from schools, removing even these basic options of self-expression and discovery to be taken away? And why does the art world cloak itself in a sense of privilege and exclusion? I call this engineered exclusivity, and it engineers because to be in, other people have to be out. So, you know, there's biennials, at openings, there's always this notion of restriction. And I don't know how many of you have experienced going into a New York gallery and you have this gallerista typing away and you're all but invisible. It's not a pleasant experience for a lot of people, and people do feel alienated. And as I said, this is the area that No Longer Empty increasingly works and takes its passion, working to make the experience of art accessible to a wider public. And it's not just about putting it there. It's about creating the experience that makes people feel from the very beginning that they belong. Everything like free entry, a welcome, and really everybody that sort of works with us, our volunteers, we train them to, when people come in, you say hello, welcome, this is who we are, have you any questions? And please, if you have any questions about the art, it's really important, I think, to create that sense of welcome. And then we provide numerous educational and cultural programming that provides many means of access into the exhibition experience, and I'll go on to talk about those too. So the 5 elements, and I had a workshop yesterday in Norman where instead of just sitting around doing lunches, people actually were given the job of creating their own exhibition around a vacant building in Norman, so we may get to that today. But there's 5 elements that we can talk about that sort of go into every No Longer Empty model. Site specificity, revitalization, obviously, of the buildings that we go into, the programming, the legacy, and legacy is really important because we really want to monitor what we achieve there and how the model that we put into a particular site can continue to flourish, and of course, replicability. So here's a few before and after pictures. So this is the old Tower Records in the West Village, and this is the exhibition we put there. Everything related to music, and we had 14 in-store performances, and then a panel discussion, call from discs to downloads about how the change in technology had led to the demise of such an iconic institution as Tower Records. And it created an amazing nostalgia, because Tower Records had been a place that every other visitor told me when they were students, they'd come on a Saturday night, they'd meet with people, exchange music, listen to music. And when we opened our exhibition, literally from 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock, we had a line around the block. That's sort of when we went from doing one exhibition to becoming, I think we're going to say, the Pressman Wildflower Show. This is a site in the Lower East Side. So we do a lot of building, and it's really important for us to show art in a professional way, even though we're in non-traditional sites. I'll talk about the grants later. So these investigations into site and community, these activities of research and outreach, and the type of curation and programming they lead to, are the essential tools, I believe, of the foundations for a broadly democratic access to art. For us, creating an exhibition is not just art historical research into an artist's work or the outcome of predetermined themes. Curation, in this instance, is about opening up a subject, creating a discourse, not presenting conclusions, but making the process transparent. Our exhibitions deal not only with the relationship between artworks, but between art and the social, spatial, and economic, to name but a few, conditions of a given site and the community in which it's situated. The exhibition, seen as such, becomes a complex investigation into cultural practice itself, how art is produced, how it's funded, how it's located and presented, who its audiences could be, and what the impediments are to all of those things. As Dorothea Richter, who I quoted before, says, thus the exhibition is to be understood here not merely in terms of its surface or design, but as part of a complex of media in which all elements contribute consciously or unconsciously to the production of meaning. Today's exhibition is considered a cultural practice which conveys values and norms and thus implicitly ideological concepts. To encourage a debate around curating is therefore a way to engage with the ideological sphere, and that is motivated through a desire not to curate but to engage with the world. And that engaging with the world, I think, could be sort of described as really the heart of everything we're trying to do. I'm going to cut some of this theory out. Let's go back to the grass. That's a historic picture of the house as we received it. The history of this